progress.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the April 10th Downtown Parking Committee meeting. Can I have the roll call, please?
Committee Member Labrie.
Present.
Committee Member Pratt.
Present.
Committee Member Stahl.
Present.
Committee Member Zarate.
Present.
Vice Chair Newkirk.
Here.
Chair Pinner.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great, thank you. Do we have any requested changes to the agenda today?
No changes, Chair Pinner.
Great, thank you. We'll move on to the next item, which is public comment. This is the part of the meeting where anyone in the public who wishes to make public comment for items within the jurisdiction of the Downtown Parking Committee, but not on today's agenda. Do we have any requests to speak?
No speakers, Chair Pinner.
Okay, we'll close public comment and we'll move on to announcements. Any announcements today, staff?
Chair Pinner, I'd like to update the committee first on ongoing construction. This is a significant year for capital projects for downtown parking. A lot of projects that we've actually been hoping to accomplish for years. One of which is happening right now in two phases, is Lot 5, or the Victoria parking lot. That is having sidewalk and also curb cut work. And it will actually be fully repaved, which will be great. The challenge, though, is that it will be will be out for a full week, that lot is inaccessible. It's been notified. The local businesses have been notified. City News and Brief. It's been signed in the lot, but that will be a significant outage for one of our busier parking lots. Similarly, I'll share that upcoming in just about 2 weeks, Lot 12, or Seville Plaza, right by Santa Barbara Roasting Company, they will be doing remediation on that site, and that will be closing half of the lot. So that lot will frequently be full or at capacity. Again, that's been well messaged. A lot of important projects happening, but we do our best to try to let the public know that some of their regular routines will be impacted. Similarly, I'd like to share one of the spaces that Downtown Parking manages, that is 920 State, that was formerly 805 University, is advertised. And we are looking for the next tenant to make that space great. 805 University did not choose to negotiate to enter into an ongoing relationship after the transition of Metro Theaters.
Great, thank you. All right, we'll move on to the next items or the agenda, which is first the approval of the minutes from the special meeting of March 19th, 2025. I'll entertain a motion. Anybody?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, we have a first. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Stahl. All right. Any discussion regarding the motion? All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I'll abstain.
Okay, Mr. Newkirk abstains. Motion carries. All right, thank you. We'll move on to item number 2. This was an item that was moved from our last meeting to this meeting to a larger, so we had more of our members here. And this is the opportunity for an election of chair and vice chair to serve for the calendar year of 2025. And I will entertain a motion, if there is one. And I will say, I have talked to the vice chair. He is willing to serve in either role, so that is available. He's also willing to keep the roles the way they are. So, or if there's someone else of the committee who would like to take on either one of those roles, we'll entertain that motion as well. Just want to let you know it has been discussed.
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion that we recognize and thank and commission the current chair and vice chair to serve another term.
Okay, that's a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion regarding the motion? Any discussion? Proposed vice chair? All right. Seeing no discussion, we'll move to the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you, Mr. LeBrie, appreciate that. I think Mr. Newkirk and I enjoy very much serving in this role. We enjoy working with staff. I enjoyed the training I received from Mr. LeBrie to handle this role, and look forward to another good year of working with you all. So thank you very much, appreciate it. All right, we will move on to item number 3, which is fiscal year 2026 policy update review. Thank you. Take it away.
Thank you, Chair Pinner. So I'd like to introduce this item first in that downtown parking and parking systems run by cities in general are going through a lot of iterative change right now. There's a lot of learning and also a lot of improvements that are happening in small forms and in larger forms. What we've really been focusing on for the entirety downtown parking team this year is what can we do that is within our typical operations that will lead to improvements for customer service and also for making us whole as we try to complete the sort of the funding challenges that we're facing. So we've been looking at all of our operations, and we're excited to continue to brainstorm what we think is possible and also to get input from you all how to really hone and optimize our parking system, especially in the given formats that we have. So I'll start with our tune-up.
And before you do, can I ask one question? If I recall, and you just mentioned input, I mean, our intention is to give you, this is more for the committee, that the intention is at the end of this to give staff clear direction on our preferred choices, direction on this. So it's not just a report, and thank you for the report. It's a report and us giving clear feedback. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's correct, Chair Pinner. We're looking today for recommendations from the committee as we move forward to the council budget review process, which for us is actually going to start next week. On Thursday, we'll be presenting to the Council Finance Committee sort of our initial recommendation for the FY26 budget. So before we get into those more formal negotiations, we'd like to get direction and recommendations from the committee on our proposal.
Thanks. I just want anyone on the committee to know where we're headed. Thanks.
So thank you. So with that, if we'll move to the next slide, please. So how can we, sorry. So how can we tune up our downtown parking system? One, we've been exploring all the ways we can further discount employee parking, especially within our given budget constraints. How can we provide affordable off-street parking for downtown residents within our existing system? We'd like to pilot a pay-by-plate system in the Helena lot. We'd like to limit daily courtesy period misuse, which has been an issue that we'll discuss a lot more, and then streamline on-street timed parking. Now, a new commuter permit discount. The Ortega Garage, Lot 10, is one of the lots that we've been focusing on that is close to many key areas of employment and also has a lot of additional capacity that's underutilized. This is where our legacy permit holders from the Coda Commuter lot primarily transferred to. Some also transferred to Lot 2, that's on Ken and Perdido. We would like to reduce the employee parking or the monthly parking permit by over half for everyone. So this would be significant. It would cost us in terms of lost revenue about $65,000. However, this gives a much more affordable, not special qualification, but just for anyone who's working downtown, who's looking for affordable, regular employee parking. This gives an avenue that we think is really straightforward and that works within the capacity of our system. In the same garage, we've been looking for an alternative for all of the issues that come up in some of the very impacted downtown neighborhoods. It might seem a little bit strange. We're both thinking about immediate kind of surrounding neighborhoods and also future development, which, project by project is coming online, where parking is impacted, to give an option. And we're building off of the existing 24/7 permit, which we've noted has use, but is priced pretty expensively. And so we actually, in this lot, want to drop from $250, again, by half, to $125 a month. That is an estimated loss of $15,000 in revenue, but this is an option that we want to continue to build and invest in. And I will say, for both of these estimated losses, the math can get complicated. We potentially will sell more of this, and there might be a balance. But budgeting conservatively, we have to plan for that adjustment. Now, switching to sort of how are we honing the assets that we have the Helena lot that is right adjacent the Funk Zone, basically across the street from the Lot 13. A lot of folks don't see it. I believe the hotel adjacent is still called the Wayfarer. May have changed names. But we had attempted early on with LPR to have a kiosk similar to the waterfront and to do a pay-on-foot model. We want to bring that back. There's not a lot of spaces. I believe there are 39 spaces, but it would really be a learning opportunity for us as we pilot different systems that can be more flexible for future needs. This would really improve some customer parking in the Funk Zone that's highly impacted, and it would enable our pilot of a self-serve pay-by-plate operational model. I've used pay-on-foot and pay-by-plate. We're really kind of working with our partners in the police department and the waterfront for how they use systems and then what those systems can next transition to. So basically, just to share here, if you pay on foot, you go to the ticket dispenser, you pay, and then you go and display that on your dash. Pay by plate, you go and you enter your license plate and you're done, and that saves you a trip back to your vehicle. Now, this is a little bit of a pun, but we would like to curb courtesy period misuse. The 75-minute shuffle happens in a lot of ways, one of which is pretty obvious to all of those who work in downtown parking, where we'll see people exit and immediately re-enter the same lot. In some cases, they're not even circling the block. They're literally making a U-turn at the kiosk to re-enter the lot. This is illegal under our municipal code, but in different ways, people have sort of abused the concept of the courtesy period for longer term or even all-day parking. We want to reduce exit delays, the kind of extra traffic on downtown streets, and really start to minimize the 75-minute shuffle. However, how can we do this in a way that we're not unintentionally causing inconvenience for customers who may have a morning appointment, who may be coming back downtown for dinner or what have you? And so really, like the term our city administrator has coined of a dimmer switch for our courtesy period, and to reduce misuse without impacting kind of regular downtown use. And so we've actually come up with three scenarios, and apologize, these scenario on the right-hand side, we have a typo. So scenario 1, 2, and 3, forgive the typo where scenario 1 is repeated. We'd like to have a per lot courtesy period, an aggregate courtesy period, or courtesy period by duration. So this is something we really want your all's input on. Through our existing revenue and access control provider, we can set the system so that there's one courtesy period per lot per vehicle each day. So you might go to Old Town, and then you might go up into the Arts District, later in the day, and that you experience 2 courtesy periods. Or we can have an aggregate of your courtesy period time. In other words, you have a 45-minute trip, and then you have to go somewhere else for a quick pickup, and you still have the remaining balance of half an hour on your courtesy period. That could be spread across the system. Or we basically reset after a given time frame. We've been playing with 6 hours. So again, you're here for a morning meeting, and then you return in the afternoon, and you have a kind of a new courtesy period clock. However, somebody who's wanting to shuffle their vehicle can't just kind of reset the clock automatically for the courtesy period. So I'd like for you all to kind of think about that, and we'll discuss that further. Now, this is an important one. Again, this is part customer service, part 75-minute shuffle. How can we streamline and simplify our on-street parking? If you look at the downtown core, the timed parking is like a checkerboard. In some cases, it's 15 minutes. In some places, it's 75. The 90 and 75, we've had efforts kind of over the course of regular maintenance to streamline the parking, I think especially kind of starting up from like the 300, 400, and 500 blocks. But we really want to invest in a push to, across downtown, have consistency and the specific timing is less important, and we want input from you all, but that there's a consistency so that as a downtown visitor, you know that on the 0 block, the timing is X amount. On the next block over, you'll have more time, and ideally that's consistent with the courtesy period. And then out in the neighborhood, you will probably be in an RPP zone. That is then 90 minutes if you're not a residential permit holder. Part of this is for downtown parking enforcement where resources are fairly limited. How do you make the most out of a parking enforcement officer's time? For them to have to reset for different time periods, it takes away from their effectiveness. And by having a consistency, it means that we can enforce. Something that's important to note is that 15 minutes doesn't mean on minute 16, 17, or 18, you're getting a ticket. Typically, and in fact, there's a lot of leeway in terms of how this is managed, kind of internally as a city. 15 minutes would probably mean there's about another 15-minute grace period, so that we could effectively manage a 15-minute zone as a 30 before people get tickets. Of course, there's what's signed, and that's a choice, and then there's kind of what the internal policy is as to at what point we want to make sure that people are being cited for staying too long. I do want to note now one of the penalties that we bear when we don't have very consistent timed parking and we're not able to enforce effectively is a lot of parking. Every 15-minute zone came to life because businesses wanted people to be able to access them easily. And they want parking available near their storefront. And when that isn't enforced effectively, that means that parking isn't available in front of their storefront easily. So it's from a customer service standpoint, from the system working effectively, and certainly from accessibility to businesses, that's kind of the effort here.
Mr. Chair, just real quick.
Yep, Delivery.
Just a quick question of staff. So we're listening to this through the right lenses. The overarching goals of all of these, and we're going to get into a bunch of little detail here in a sec on your report, just so we understand, and I understand in particular, the overarching goals are to what? Increase revenue and streamline or make more simpler the system. So if you just speak to that one real quick again before we get into all these little things.
Yeah.
And then as you go through them, if you wouldn't mind saying why this is in reaction to a lack of support for this permit at this rate, or, whatever the reason is that you're proposing the change, if you can make that a little bit clearer on each, I would appreciate it.
Absolutely. So Chair Pinner, Committee Member Labrie, let me answer that directly, and thank you for that question. I'd say the overarching goal for all of these is for our system to work most effectively. There's a couple parts to that. First off, we have off-street parking that's available that is meant to highlight and kind of work in tandem with on-street parking. It's about 1,200 on-street spots in our downtown core. It's about 3,000 off-street spots that the public manages. Those off-street spots are intended really for longer-term use, and those on-street spots are really intended for shorter-term use. That's where the system works the best for downtown businesses. That's also where the system works the best for how our system was designed to be able to pay for itself as an enterprise fund. All right, so we're knowingly making the most convenient parking available short-term, and then our lots and our structures are slightly less convenient, but we're making that available as affordably as we can longer term. And what we've noticed, and if you recall from last committee meeting when we went through occupancy, our short-term under 75-minute visits have increased up to 66% most recently. What that meaning is too many of those short-term trips are actually pushed into our lots, and we want to allow those short-term visits to be in the most direct to each storefront location, which is the on-street parking. So we're trying to get the system to work as kind of all the parking management people will say, like, what's the healthiest balance? We also will incur more revenue because less people are doing the 75-minute shuffle. The 75-minute shuffle does take away, it's people gaming the system in a way that does take away revenue from downtown parking. It also is a loss of productivity. It is not a good use of people's time during the workday, either for their own well-being or for their employer, to multiple times a day have to go out and repark a vehicle. And somehow, by the way that we manage our system overall, we've actually been encouraging this, and we're trying to tune up the system so that we give affordable options and we discourage a misuse that affects us and really affects kind of the city overall. So I'd say that's the overarching vision that I see for this. So again, I really appreciate that question. And that helps as we get into the items that we're proposing and the specific fee schedule modifications that we're proposing here. So I have two slides of modifications that we're making to the fee schedule, and then we have the fee schedule attachment for you. This is something that we present every year for modifications that we make. And Mr. Labrie, I can guarantee you, you'll be very excited by the last item on this fee schedule. So first off, we're adding clarity to the first 75 minutes courtesy period to once per day per vehicle. Again, operationally, we're going to allow that dimmer switch, but we're making clear in our fee schedule that the courtesy period is once per day per vehicle. We are dropping, and again, this is what we want input from you all in the recommendation. So if you have modifications that you would like propose, please think about them, jot them down. To drop the Lot 10 Ortega Garage monthly permit parking from $145 to $70 a month. We would then omit the restricted monthly parking in downtown parking number 10, which is $85 a month, because why would you pay $85 if there's a permit for $70? We would, the refuse enclosure rental, we would increase. This has just been an issue. It's actually managed by our partners at Sustainability and Resilience, but this is a cost that we bear and that we're just trying to more appropriately price that.
We should clarify, I think there's a typo there because it says drops from 40 to 65 a month.
Ooh, that is totally,
Increases.
that is absolutely a typo. That is an increase. Thank you, Chair Pinner. The Coda commuter lot parking, no longer available. We omit this from our fee schedule. This is the unauthorized permit parking location. Actually, Mr. Labrie, this is the one. So we have a policy where permit holders, when they sign their agreement, are asked to park either on the roof or not on the main floor of each given lot. The intention of that is so that their long-term parking doesn't take away a easier to access spot for customers. That's kind of always been our policy. And the reality is we don't have effective enforcement mechanisms of that, short of terminating someone's permit, which we don't want to terminate somebody's permit, right? And so how do we have sort of a modest nudge when we have a repeat behavior where somebody is taking up a spot that we're trying to use for customers for their discounted monthly permit? And so that is this item where we would basically be able to cite them internally with a fee due notice of $15 per incident in which they are parked in an area where they have signed an agreement not to park. Next, for the Lot 13, the Amtrak Greyhound passenger rate. This is tricky. We want to discount that use where people are taking Amtrak or a long-distance bus and need to park in the lot. However, we said per 24 hours, which is not compatible with how our system prices. And so this is just to improve operationally. We changed that to per calendar day because we operate on a calendar day. Next, special event entrance fees. This is something that we do for theaters, for other special events where people can prepay. And sometimes those are an hour and a half, 2 hours. Sometimes those are actually 6 to 8 hour events. And we need thus more flexibility for our special event fees, especially just to recoup the cost. We invest a lot of staff and additional time for event fees. So we're making this a sliding scale of a $5 flat rate to $3 to a $20 range. And this is really just so we have the ability for very long duration events so that we can cover the cost of our staffing. Next, for our holiday schedule, we want to add Martin Luther King Jr. Day to our schedule that is only downtown parking rates in effect 11 to 6 p.m. Next, the Helena lot, as we've discussed. This was a previous effort, and so the rate schedule for this lot is different from the other lots. It was $2 an hour. We want to move that to $3, consistent with the rest of our lots, and we'd increase the maximum or the daily max from $15 to $20, which is still less than our other lots, but we felt that was reasonable. Again, we're trying to bring the Helena lot into our system, and that would be operated similar to how many of the waterfront lots are operated. Now, facility user fee. This is something that when people book out a lot, there's, for example, projects where Southern California Edison did a reliability project, or a contractor needs to store equipment in the lot. There's a special use of the lot that requires a fair amount of coordination of our staff, and we realized we're just really underpriced for the amount of staff time required to allow those uses, and so we'd like to increase that to $200 a day. Next, as we mentioned, sort of for downtown residents, the 24/7 parking permit, we're proposing to make this up to $250 a month, which adds price flexibility so that, again, in the Ortega garage, we can pilot this at half cost, and we could offer discounts in other lots without needing to update the fee schedule. Lastly, and we should be promoting this more, we're looking to further discount the locals weekender permit from $100 to $80 every 6 months. We've also been playing with the structure of the weekender permit so that we could allow for Friday evenings. This would make this a more compelling, and when you think about our commuter permits and use being pretty intensive, kind of Monday through Friday, this is a way for people who want to visit downtown regularly to have very discounted parking over the weekends. So, hope you've been kind of thinking creatively and taking notes, because we'd like to recommend that the committee make recommendations after receiving this report on the parking system policy updates and including the fee schedule for our upcoming fiscal year.
Thank you, Mr. Franz. I thinking about how to go through these, and I guess maybe we can either do them, item by item, but I maybe want to offer the committee the opportunity, if there's sort of more of sort of in the line of Mr. LeBree's first question, any more like sort of general questions as opposed to each item, and then we can maybe roll through each of these things, but I don't know if there's any general questions, if that makes sense, what I'm looking for. And if not, I'm happy to just start, taking these one by one. Yes. Well, first we can ask questions of staff, and then we can move to public comment. So really, this is really a time for staff, the committee, if they have any questions of staff before doing public comment.
I have a question about like individual ones.
Yeah, it's okay. We can do questions on individuals. I was just first thinking if there's a big, broad question, let's get it out there. If there's not, let's go with questions on anything individual for staff. Yep, Mr. Newkirk.
Yeah, thanks. Thinking of those scenarios for the shuffling, like if there was one 75-minute period, like 75 total minutes, like would there be a way when you're leaving the garage or the lot to like have that information? Because it seems like it'll be pretty vague for the user to know like how much time they have, because they're not going to be doing like a stopwatch when they enter the first time.
Chair Pinner, committee member, or Vice Chair Newkirk, that is a great question, and I think we'll need to ask our technology provider if that can be given, if that can be printed on a ticket, or if that can be given by the gate attendant at the kiosk. That would probably be one complicating factor for that scenario.
And then, thank you. And a question on the on-street kind of streamlining. Would we be now applying this on Sundays?
Again, that's a great question. I know that historically parking enforcement hasn't been active Sundays. I'll move to.
Sure. Chair Pinner, committee member Newkirk, I think at this time we would keep the same days of the week that we currently have for enforcement. We could look at in the future expanding that out if we felt that that was warranted. But at this point, we'd just be looking at keeping the same days.
What's the because isn't it like the street parking? It's not. It's like on the signage. It's Sunday's an exception, right?
Yes, generally speaking. I'm trying to remember because we do have some places where it is enforced on Sunday, but I believe most of downtown is not enforced on Sundays.
So, and what's the rationale for that? Because, like, I mean, when we're trying to like sync up the system, the garage and surface lot parking is not free on Sundays. So it's like there is like when we're trying to sync up the street and the system, they're totally different on Sundays.
Committee member Newkirk, that's a great question. I think some of this is a little bit legacy. Initially the timed parking downtown, particularly as you get further out into the residential areas, the intent of those programs was to free up on-street customer parking and to prevent commuters from using the street all day. So Sunday was seen as, a day where you did not have significant commuter impacts to the downtown. And also part of it may be a holdover from way back in the day when we did have free Sundays. So, I don't know the history of how those days were chosen well predates me, so I don't know the full rationale for that. But generally speaking, it's fairly standard to have relaxed parking on Sundays.
Mr. Chair.
Yep, Mr. LeBree.
On the courtesy period scenario one, the idea there is that regardless of the duration of that courtesy period in that particular lot, you just get one. You go in for 5 minutes, you've gotten one for that lot. Go to the next lot, stay for 20 minutes. But you're not, aggregating time. You couldn't go back to that first lot and use another, 70 minutes that you didn't use the first time. Is that correct?
Committee Member Labrie, correct. If you think of this as algebra, trying to have a pretty simple equation and not like a multi-point algebraic equation. Again, our technology providers are reaching out to try to kind of make good on our ability to effectuate this, but we wouldn't want to have kind of a compound equation in this case. I do want to reiterate, when we think about the courtesy period, the courtesy period was originally aligned with PBIA, and those assessments from local businesses covered most, if not all, of the courtesy period. We're talking about a historic system, 50-plus years old. That is not the case, and the PBIA contributes $1 million, and if we charged everybody who used our lots without a courtesy period, that would be an additional $6 million that we do not recoup. And so when we look at the abuse of the courtesy period where people are using it multiple times, it's actually a significant chunk of that courtesy period where we as a city and we as a parking fund are foregoing that revenue. So we want to have a dimmer switch. We don't want to create too many ways for people to just continue to kind of game the system. And actually, Committee Member Labrie, and to Mr. Newkirk's point, I'd like to share just one quick thought about the Sunday parking. Certainly, aligning how we manage compliance on the street and in our lots is really significant. One thing that was interesting about Sundays, when we were looking at kind of the history of Sundays, when Sundays were free, one of the big issues, it was actually not revenue-based so much as for lots that were impacted, it was difficult to access businesses in those lots that would then fill when there was no rate on Sundays, right? So again, one of the management strategies that we need to employ is maintaining access to all of our downtown businesses. And so when there's no price basis at all, and of course this would be a similar issue for managing the on-street, that parking becomes inaccessible. So I think to that point, like, how do we iterate this year, and how can we iterate kind of further to make sure that there is some parking available in all the areas of our downtown?
I have a couple questions. On the simplified on-street parking, would the intention to be in the 0 blocks that are going to be 15, would it just be signed or would it be painted? Do we intend that the parking curb would all be painted green where it's going to be accessible, or just signed?
Chair Pinner, we are looking to be able to paint and actually to be able. Whoops, Chair Pinner, sorry. We are looking to paint curbs and to reduce the number of signs and signposts in the downtown core. This does represent investment, so this would be a part of the annual curb striping program, so that could be done in-house. But actually to fully do this out with painted curbs, which is the most clear communication to visitors, we currently estimate at around $45,000 as a one-time investment.
And if I could follow up on that question, is, I've looked, knowing this was coming up on an agenda item, as I've drove the streets, I've actually looked at them. And, I shouldn't get into comment yet, more of a question. What would happen what is the current time frame for a loading zone, a yellow zone, for a commercial?
Chair Penner, commercial, so I believe the answer is that it can vary a little bit. Fortunately, we've got Steve Sisler there, who is our traffic technician who manages all of these. Right now in the downtown core, our loading zones, our commercial loading zones are 30 minutes.
Okay, thank you. And then one other question. On the pilot resident 24/7 discount on the Ortega lot, there's a verification method for someone, I'm asking the question, how do you determine the difference between a commuter permit discount in the Ortega lot versus the resident? Obviously, they're different price, and so if I were coming in for one, I'd want to be a commuter versus a resident. But the difference, can a commuter one be in there 24/7, or do they have to go out every day?
Chair Pinner, so the commuter permits are intended for day use. You can be in there overnight. We're not, occasional overnight use. If, say, you go out to dinner and you don't want to drive home, something like that after work, that's not a problem. But we do note, our staff check all the cars that are in the lot when we close. We do note if your car is parked consistently overnight, and we actually, we mark it and we'll tow it away if it appears to be abandoned. Again, commuter permit, occasional overnight use is fine, but really it's intended for daytime commuter use. When you talk about the distinctions between the two and how we make those distinctions, I don't know exactly what kind of documentation we're looking for today, because it's been a minute since I worked at the counter. However, we do ask when we issue any permit, the permittee has to supply us with both their home address as well as their employer address. And so, we're able to tell pretty easily if and when we have somebody, for example, and we've seen this before, they'll come in and their home address is right next to the parking lot, but their work address is somewhere else. We can tell pretty easily if somebody's not going to be using that for the commuter use, it's more residential use.
Thank you. And one other just question. In the fee schedule for the Amtrak lot for the $10, if I recall, you have to also have a proof of a train ticket. Is that accurate?
Chair Pinner, we request that. Sometimes people don't have a ticket, and we can call into the office and we can try to discern.
The intention is to have a ticket.
The intention is, and indeed, we try to curb abuse. There has been reported abuse of people pretending to have tickets or not actually being commuters or long-haul transit users. Again, we're trying to prevent gamification and misuse of our system. So thank you for that point.
Great, thank you. Other questions? Mr. Newkirk?
Yeah, sorry, one more. On the holiday schedule, is adding MLK Day more of a cost savings for overtime, or just to kind of put it on the same level as those holidays listed? And then, if I remember, there's 4 days that we don't enforce at all because of holidays, and what's the rationale for having completely free days versus certain holidays that are 11 to 6?
Vice Chair Newkirk, that's a great question. I will say there, to your first question, I'd say both. Martin Luther King Jr. Day is more widely recognized and observed. So this would make our fee schedule consistent with that. Also, that means fewer people are coming downtown to work. And so that day makes more sense to not be fully staffed. And in terms of some days that we are not staffed at all, and actually on the very bottom of our fee resolution, you'll see days that we are non-operation, like New Year's Day, Christmas Day, and I believe one other day that are observed that parking rates are not in effect. There are calls that we have to make where it would be non-economic because of a given holiday to operate. And we try, of course, for that to align with that holiday schedule, because it is an issue, especially if we are on a holiday and we have to pay holiday overtime pay. It becomes more expensive to operate. So there are those days that there's not high occupancy where we're not going to run either full hours or in some cases we're not going to operate at all. And we try to make that consistent with our fee schedule so that that's predictable for members of the public.
Isn't Easter one of those days? Because that wouldn't be a holiday.
Yes, Committee Member Newkirk, the 4 days of the year that we do not charge are Thanksgiving, Christmas Day, New Year's Day, and Easter Sunday.
Great, thank you. Well, if no other questions, we'll go to public comment, and then we'll come back to that. So do we have any public comment?
Chair Pinner, we have Lucille Boss for public comment.
Welcome, our Planning Commission liaison. Good to see you.
Good morning, committee members. Lucille Boss. Here's just a city resident who works downtown. I am encouraging you to do a bit of public education around some of the discussion today. For example, some of us may have learned today that we were violating the Santa Barbara Municipal Code by leaving a parking lot, circling the block, and then coming back. So good to educate folks who work downtown and were not aware that that was not permitted. And then also to encourage you to consider folks who are kind of commuting in, parking downtown, and may have several meetings that are in close proximity to several different parking lots. So for myself, for example, I may start by parking on the street in the 75-minute zone, go to a meeting that requires me to go to the Ortega lot, go back to my office at the Granada lot, and then go to another lot for another meeting. And typically meetings are about an hour, and so that tells me that I would really only get the courtesy period in one of those lots when I'm required to really be in all of those lots if my schedule doesn't allow me to walk or bike between the meetings. So just encourage a little bit more community education. One, so we know if we're violating municipal code by shuffling in the parking lot or if on the street, if that's a violation too, that's good for us to know. But also consider folks who are working downtown and do need to park in several different lots throughout the day that would exceed 75 minutes. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other requests to speak?
No other speakers.
Okay, with that, we'll close public comment, and we'll bring it back to the committee to start trying to give you guys some direction on it. Excuse me, I guess we'll just, like I said, start in order. Mr. LeBrie?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, as I look at this, in my mind, it's kind of breaking down to three general areas, and I might suggest that, if at the chair's pleasure, that maybe we consider kind of the courtesy period as a topic, and all of the little fee changes as a topic, and the kind of reorganizing the street parking signage as a topic.
Agree, that's fine.
To me, a couple of these are fairly easy. But I mean, I think we can take them in bites or take them all at once, but I'd suggest in bites. And just to kind of kick us off with regard to the courtesy period, I like scenario one. I too tend to, and I think a lot of people use the system in that way that was just described by, you have several meetings downtown. And so I'm a proponent of scenario one. I'll just leave my comments there for the moment.
Thank you. On scenario one, following up to that, I think Mr. LeBrie asked the question, and Mr. Newkirk also asked the question, like, how much time do you have left over? And this leftover time frame seems to me it would be very hard technologically wise to manage and to communicate with the resident, the person parking, how much time you have left. So I would, whatever scenario, I would not be in favor of something that says you have a share of time to use somewhere else. So under scenario one, to me, the language would be limit one courtesy period per lot up to a maximum of 75 minutes. So if you use 3 minutes in one lot and then you go to the next lot, you're done with that lot. And it didn't matter the time. It's really, you're done with that lot. You go to the next lot. You have up to 75 minutes. If you only use 5, you're still done with that lot. It's not like leftover time to keep taking the lots. To me, that would be like the algebra you were talking about would be too confusing. So that would be my comment on that. between scenario 1 and we'll call it scenario 3, I understand the goal here. I do agree that I think if we were to do a survey on the street and ask the public, they would have no idea that the scenario doesn't mean 75 minutes lots every time you go into any lot. That would be the current perception, I think, right now. So where we go next to this is a significant education period. Scenario 1 is clearly a easier lift, less challenging, I think, for the public. Not sure if it's meeting the intended goal. That's the good question. Or is the idea of one courtesy period in the morning, one courtesy period in the afternoon? Maybe a little harder to educate. I think scenario 1 is by far the easiest one to educate. Those are my comments on on the courtesy period misuse. Others from the committee.
Just to confirm, in the code, it doesn't have a time frame per one courtesy period a day, and then the city has sort of figured out what that time is.
Mr. Pitney, would you be willing to come to the microphone and read the municipal code?
Just waiting on my computer to load here, but I had it pulled up.
You had one other question, so I was looking at one.
Yeah, thank you. I guess the other thing too is, say, this gets approved, what is flexibility if, say, after a set amount of time, we're like, this really isn't working as planned, do we have to go through the whole thing? I know this isn't directly tied to the budget. I know we're talking budget today. But what is the flexibility of altering it once we get the actual data of it being implemented?
Chair Pinner, Committee Member Pratt, that's a great question, and that's one of the things we're really excited about these tune-up opportunities is they're really at an administrative level. In learning, we get feedback and we respond, and if we have feedback like, well, we can't do that, that's not effective, that's causing issues, we can regroup pretty immediately. So again, we've been working with our provider. We've been doing a lot of internal discussions. So if we were to get feedback that the choice that we made to tune was a bad one, we could pretty immediately change it. I'd say the only things that we wouldn't be able to change here are fee schedule changes, which are primarily reductions, and those obviously we'd have to stick to for about a year.
Committee Member Pratt, through the chair. So in the Muni Code, Chapter 10, 44, subsection 152, it does say that any person removing a vehicle, sorry, how was it? Hello?
Yeah.
There we go. Got to talk closer. It does say any person removing a vehicle from the lot and re-entering a lot for the sole purpose of avoiding payment of parking fees shall pay a parking fee as if said vehicle had not departed the lot.
Okay, so that doesn't mean going from one lot to another lot. It seems to mean going from one lot to the same lot.
It means it would include going from one lot to another lot if the purpose was to avoid the fees. So for example, you were ping-ponging back and forth between two lots because, rather than just circling the same lot. But the intent of the municipal code is that, it's meant to be not something that's used to just get free parking all day.
So this would be a little bit like rolling your car forward to hide the chalk underneath the tire, which it says you have to move from one block to another block. You cannot stay in the same block.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Are there other comments on this particular item? On the courtesy period? Mr. Newkirk?
Yeah, I think I like scenario 3, but I could be convinced on scenario 1. I think certainly implementation's easier, and maybe it's a way to see the effectiveness of a change. So I'm, I could go either way. I think scenario 2 is kind of messy, and the arithmetic on that would be, I don't know, a bit tedious, I think, for both downtown parking and for the user. But I like implementing one of these, so it sounds like there might be more interest in scenario 1, and I could support that.
Did you have a comment? No. Okay. I was going to say, yeah, for me, scenario 2 is just, I think it's not feasible. Just way too much work, to Mr. Newkirk's comment. Scenario 3, originally, I think you had thought staff sort of a morning and afternoon, or you had given their example of 6 hours. I mean, it could be less, it could be 3 hours. I mean, right, it could be some different time. Again, I think that gets to be a little confusing. If I understand the primary goal with this is more not violating the current rule, but is it more budgetary, more economic driven, in the sense that there's dollars that are not being captured, and/or if this were more enforced, would it more likely that people the idea of a permit at now a much lower cost potentially of $70 per month would be a much more, it would drive that more likely if the 75-minute shuffle were basically eliminated. Make sense? Question?
Yes, I think so, Chair Pinner. And, to your point about sort of or your question about what the motivation and the driver for this is, the answer is sort of both. So, as Ed discussed earlier, our goal is to make the parking system work the way it's intended. This committee has discussed in the past, of course, and what remains our policy, the Park Once policy. We want to encourage people to stay in the parking lot and, walk or use bike share or get around town in other ways rather than just hopping from parking lot to parking lot. So this also sort of reinforces that concept. We do get a lot of negative externalities from people cycling. It causes traffic. It causes, as Ed said, people do drive pretty dangerously sometimes to try to do this. They'll flip U-turns on one-way streets and things like that. We want to discourage that. But then there is also sort of the aspect of sort of trying to tighten up the kind of holes in our system and places where misuse of that system is resulting in a loss of what would otherwise be revenue. So, we're going to get next into our budget discussion. This committee is very familiar with the budgetary difficulties that we have faced over the past several years as a program. We want to be able to work towards a more balanced budget with as minimal impact as possible to the community. And so, a place to start would be sort of like patching up some of these areas where, we've got some leaks in the system. And so, but the driver here of these policy items, is also very much to improve the way that our system works, and also to pilot and to sort of experiment with some concepts that we may use in the future to further improve our system.
Great, Mr. Newkirk.
Yeah, sorry, one more thing. If we do scenario 1, I guess one concern I have is we talk about, like someone has a morning meeting and comes back later in the evening. Now they can't park in the same lot again. That seems a bit silly. So they'd have to park, a couple blocks further away, just because that's the lot they used for their meeting in the morning. So I'm wondering, maybe this might be too complicated a rule, but almost combined 1 and 3, so that it's like once per lot per 6 hours, so that like you could still use the same lot if you're truly not just using it to shuffle.
Appreciate that suggestion. I will say, so Vice Chair Newkirk, someone certainly could use the lot twice. They just wouldn't have a courtesy period in that scenario. And also, in a given scenario, and I really appreciate the public comment from Planning Commissioner Boss, one of the things that we're trying to do is if you either have a monthly permit in a lot, so if that were a frequent issue, you probably should have a permit in that lot because you're probably using that lot regularly. Another thing that we're trying to do is, which is not on this discussion, is discounted prepaid cards or authorized cards. Again, just to reduce the friction for the lots. I will say I'm a little bit apprehensive about the suggestion of the compound algebra for our provider, just because I can't guarantee that we can deliver that. But I definitely hear that logic, and we'll explore that, and that you all are welcome to try to make that to make that recommendation for us to try to make good on. I just can't I can't commit that we can offer that.
So what I'd like to do, and you mentioned getting the budget, we'll see, based on time. I'd like to, I don't know if you want to see this all in one big motion, or if we can give you motions for sort of each area here recommendation. Does it technically matter for you?
Chair Penner, you could do either way.
So, what I like to do is, since we're on the courtesy period misuse, is sort of entertain a motion, if there is one, that we can give to staff. So if there's anyone who'd like to make a motion. Mr. Labrie?
Yeah, I would move that the committee direct staff to pursue scenario one, that is the committee's preferred scenario at this time.
Okay, we have a first. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Ms. Stahl. Okay. Any discussion regarding the motion? So I would, my mention before with a max of 75 minutes per lot, is that already kind of understood? That the free period is a full free period in each lot?
Yes, the limit would be 1 75-minute courtesy period per parking lot.
Okay. Mr. Newkirk, did you have a question? Okay, all right. Seeing no other discussion, we'll go ahead and call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain. All right. We've got that taken care of.
Mr.
Great.
Chair?
What would you like to go to yet, Mr. Labrie?
I think it's good, if people are watching this morning, they may already be glazed over and back in bed because of all the kind of bumping around in the weeds here on these topics. But I think it's good to have an end in mind. And as I've been, this is really helpful and has kind of stirred the creative juices in my mind, thinking about what is our ultimate vision for parking or parking management. And without managed on-street parking, without timed management, without paid on-street parking, it's really hard to make the system work. And I think that we're looking at these solutions are under not the best circumstances. We're trying to get the most out of our system. But the end in mind that I would like to propose, not for discussion now, but just, I think if ultimately that like a prepaid card, you're able to manage the system by keeping track of the amount of time, that there are a number of scenarios that I think will work. So I mention it now just because I proposed, or I made the motion for scenario one, but I really like the idea of that kind of prepaid card. And as I think about all of the users, it kind of breaks down into, a couple of definable groups. There are downtown residents, there are kind of Santa Barbara area locals, there are employees, and then there is commercial use. And kind of everybody falls into, and then visitors, Visitors, in my mind, I leave them off because they just pay full boat. They pay, pay full boat. But when we're talking about incentives and managing the parking system, it's kind of those groups that kind of fall into predictable categories. So I say that now because as I look at this, that's the filter through which I am thinking. I'm thinking about those 4 plus visitors from out of town groups, and I'm thinking about keeping track of the time. So technology-wise, ultimately, I think if managing this like everybody's just got a prepaid card essentially. Locals, I would say every local gets a free period. No visitor gets a free period. Downtown residents get more time. You can buy a commercial permit that gives you free time during the day. You can buy a downtown residential permit that gives you free time during the night or prepaid time. So, just technology, keeping track of time is something I'd be interested in as we go forward.
And certainly something we have talked when we move to whenever the next technology round is for us, which is somewhat getting postponed, generally those are the goals. I would concur with that. I think the other sort of larger of the items that I think we need to hit is the simplified on-street parking question, which is the 0 blocks and recommendations. Did you have a question? Comment? Yeah, go for it, Ms. Stahl.
Thank you, Chair Penner. Yeah, I'm just kind of questioning the need to separate between a 75 and a 90-minute period if we're looking at streamlining. Those both seem to be medium to long-term use, and if there's a grace period anyway, if it doesn't make sense to just have the very short, like run into the pharmacy, grab something period, and then you're getting lunch.
Okay. In my looking around, I noticed that a lot of the 0 blocks now, probably 50 to 75% of the 0 blocks are either loading zones, handicap zones, or green zones. Would that be a relatively fair assessment?
Chair Penner, that's pretty fair at this point. Yeah, most of the 0 blocks have those uses split. There are, particularly when you get a bit further up towards the 12 and 1300 blocks, you do have more longer term, whether it's 75-minute or unrestricted parking.
And I think we've received feedback from the enforcement agency, which is the police department, that if this were all sort of known to be 15-minute parking, that the efficiency of enforcement would be much greater because they sort of can do a couple loops around that area, not kind of pinging 75 feet, and then they can do the outer loops in different things. So the making sure that parking is not being abused, especially the 75-minute parking, which might already be being abused, my understanding of that would be a lot easier, a lot more effective. Is that a fair reflection?
Yes, and that's one of the goals with streamlining, is to make it so that enforcement is easier, more practical, and more efficient. So this enables them to, again, have more streamlined routes. They're not enforcing multiple time periods on the same block, for example. Although I do want to note that we would still need and want to retain disabled parking spaces and commercial loading zones on the 0 blocks in particular as well, but that's different enforcement. That's not a timed enforcement. So.
Yeah, my intention, or I think our intention is this, as you say, is not to change any or eliminate loading zones, eliminating blue zones. It's really just converting really 75-minute zones to the same short-term time frame as the existing green zones.
Yes, that's correct. It's to, again, zero blocks focus just on that short-term run-in, run-out kind of parking. And then once we go a little bit further out, and to Committee Member Stahl's point, which I think is a good one, realistically, the difference ends up being that RPP was always established as 90 minutes further out in the neighborhoods. Originally 90 minutes was the selected time frame because we had 90 minutes free in the parking lots, and so it all matched. So whether or not the residents would be wanting to reduce their on-street free time, so to speak, is probably a larger question, and one that we probably should take up at some point. But in the scope of this budget proposal, we've just kept it to the three that we already have, just sort of standardizing those.
So we had to, go ahead.
Just a quick question. So we've talked the 0 blocks, but the 100 blocks, are there any 15-minute zones in there? And you mentioned that like businesses can petition. So if you're a business on the 100 block, are we sort of saying like, well, no, you can't petition anymore for a 15 because it's going to always be 75 now, or for the time being?
Sure. Committee Member Pratt, through the chair, it's a great question, and that certainly is something that, as we standardize, and you can think of a few examples of the 100 block that do want more short-term parking. I think that we want to retain that option, and I think the goal would be to just try to make that consistent with whatever the pattern is, right? So, for example, sometimes there's 2 different spots on a block. So how can we just, again, it's not going to be perfect, and there's going to be specific use cases where businesses might want a variance, and that's a big part of what we're doing now in public outreach is talking with our business community, because there's what looks good on a map, and there's what works for everybody, and definitely this is going to be a combination of both of those things.
On that question, but I would, to that point, it's that most 0 blocks have easier access to a parking structure than the 100 block. Is that correct? I mean, as far as immediate access.
Yes, that's roughly correct. Obviously, once you get under Chappaqua and Anacapa, it's a little different depending on where you are, but yeah.
Okay, great. I don't know for the point where we can entertain a motion on, unless there's more questions, comments. Mr. Newkirk?
Yeah, and I'll offer a promotion. I'm not sure I'll get any support for it.
Well, please get it started.
And I'll maybe see staff cringing at the suggestion. I don't see why we don't apply this on Sundays. I haven't heard a compelling reason. When you're talking about less commuters, we're trying to get commuters in the lots already anyways, and allow that street parking for the quick turnover of the commercial end user. They still come on the weekends, so I don't know why. I don't see the rationale for that. So I'll move that we support staff's recommendation while also recommending to apply it on Sundays as well as Monday through Saturday.
You might be correcting your perception of a second. No second.
I'll make an alternative motion to support staff's recommendation on the
All right.
the timing of street parking.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. LeBrie, seconds? Okay. Any discussion regarding the motion?
I have a question to staff. This one requires an investment in signage, right? And I think before you mentioned that kind of it would be kind of a minimal impact. And I wanted to confirm that that's correct. This isn't a budget consideration.
Committee Member LeBrie, through the chair, correct. There would be an investment in curb painting. We're glad that Steve Sisler, our traffic technician, is here. We've mapped this out. There's weekly meetings with Sign and Paint within Public Works. This is something we believe can be done internally, and so those costs aren't like a fixed cost like a contract would be, but based on if we were to contract that out, our rough estimate at this point would be to fully redo a consistent area would be an investment well under $50,000, but actually costs that can be absorbed. So this is essentially a cost that can be absorbed within existing work, and that may have some variance in terms of what downtown parking needs to contribute to the streets fund to make it happen. But it would be an investment that would be that we believe would pay for itself very quickly.
Chair.
I think Ms. Hall had a question. You're good? Okay.
I had a quick question too. So we're looking at the cross streets, but what about the Anacapa and Chapala? Those are, I think, a mix of 15, 75. What are we looking on those ones? Like library side is 15 and, courthouse is.
Great question, Committee Member Pratt, through the chair. I would say at this point, there's been many discussions and we would love your input on this. And I will just note that we're probably going to go over time, so we might want to wrap with this agenda item. There's seemingly the most support at this point to literally split the street so that the blocks adjacent to the zero block would be consistent with the zero block's timing, and then and vice versa. But would love a suggestion from the committee on that point for Anacapa and Chapala.
Well, I guess the question is, the motion is to accept the staff's recommendation. So if the staff recommend, we'd need to be clear on the staff's recommendation, which I think is the zero block, or?
So Chair Pinner, again, I think that there actually is some room for flexibility. I believe the way we sort of initially seen it was that, yes, one side of the street would be 15, for example, the other side would be 75 when you're looking at Anacapa and Chapala. But we are open to suggestion on that, so.
Okay, so does the motion maker have, still good with the motions?
I'll leave as is.
Okay. And before we move on from a technical timing standpoint, let me ask you this question. There's another item here, which is, what does staff need to feel more important is to finish? Because you've got a rate structure here that you need us to either recommend or not, or do you need us to comment more on the following item?
So Chair Pinner, as Mr. France noted, we're probably going to have to table the following item. Unfortunately, both he and I have a hard stop for 9:30, so we can go talk to our elected officials about these proposals. This item with the policy changes is really the meat of the whole issue. The next item was to get into the dollars and cents of kind of what all this means and what our budget is going to be for our proposal is at this point for the coming year. But these are the changes that sort of enable that proposal. So
you'd like us to stay with this until
yeah,
time.
so I think getting
That's what I thought.
your commentary and recommendations on this is our priority.
That's what I thought. Okay. So, motion on the table. Any other questions or comments on the motion? Mr. LaBrie? You had your
Well,
hand up.
I think, I was just going to advocate for just applying this comment or this recommendation to the zero block and not the north-south. Because there's too many, there's different uses and residential that butts up against that, and it's not the same commercial core uses that are on the zero block, so.
Okay. Mr. Newkirk?
I don't know procedurally if we need to worry about this, but I'm happy to amend. I don't have a strong opinion on those, like the north-south or northwest-southeast blocks. So I'm happy to amend it to go the staff's recommendation limiting the 15-minute time limit strictly to the zero blocks.
So I'm going to ask the motion maker a question, though. You wouldn't want to limit the staff's ability to have 15-minute zones in those other areas. So I think it's to be that the zero blocks will either be commercial zones, loading zones, or blue zones. And it doesn't reference the other areas.
That's correct, yeah. I'm not suggesting to overtake the ADA spots in the loading zones.
Yeah, and not limit their ability to create it. If they need a green zone on Anacapa, they can do it if they want. It's not going to be exclusively green zones, though. Just, we're not touching those streets is basically what we're saying.
Correct.
Okay, sorry. Is this seconder of the motion concur, Mr. LeBrie? Okay. So we still have a motion on the table that the 0 blocks would be green zones, loading zones, and blue zones. Does that work for you?
That, it seems like it's the motion as stated by Mr. Newkirk, so yes.
And it works for you is what I'm asking.
Technically, yes, we can do that. You know, what you guys want to recommend is your
Okay.
prerogative, so.
All right. All right, any other discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, what else on the list here? Why don't we go, those are the two top ones, I think, Mr. LeBrie, in order, so I'd like to maybe jump back into,
Chair,
yes.
Chair Pinner, I would actually suggest, in the interest of time for the fee schedule,
Yep.
that we bring back the fee schedule to you a second time, and that this be our initial
Okay.
discussion, and that for the next committee meeting, we bring back the fee schedule for your, for kind of further vetting.
Okay, so if I'm hearing correctly, you don't need any more feedback on these items at this moment? Or,
If you have, you know, as I noted, unfortunately, Mr.
You have to
Franks, I have a pretty hard stop, so if, you know,
well,
if
staff
there-
just gets up and leave, the
I
meeting's
know.
over, so we're done.
Sorry, it's this new meeting time, man.
Well,
So
yeah.
if, you know, if you have any major points that you want to bring up that in points of feedback you want to pass along, if we could do that, and then as Ed said, we can bring this back as part of the budget discussion.
Is your hard stop now or 9:30? If it's now, then say it's now. Okay, nowish works for us. What I would say is this. I think I appreciate the goals here that staff is trying to, as you say, tune up things. I'm assuming these will come back in our next agenda item. That gives you still enough time to do the fee resolution in May, because this is a June item. Bearing in mind, all these are just recommendations to council, right? That's how they work from us. We can take up these items at the next, well, do you want us to make a motion to move these to the next meeting, or is it just okay that we'll just put it on the next agenda?
A motion wouldn't be needed.
Okay, I'll make the motion that we move the remaining items of agenda number, I think it's 3, item number 3 to
Correct.
the following meeting.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that carries. So with the fact that it's, staff needs to leave us for another fun meeting, I'll recommend adjournment. And we're adjourned.
Thank you.